Hey, Costello, who's on first?
Hey, Abed! The Steve Ames show is on first, with guitarist Sandy Render, pianist Mike Yanuzzi, and Steve's special guest, talent scout Walt Gollender. I'm not really Lou Costello. I'm your announcer, Wayne Rubin, and I'm a bad boy. And now here's the star of the show, Steve Ames.
Well, what do you know? She smiled at me in my dreams last night. My dreams are getting better all the time. Well, what do you know? She looked at me in a different light. My dreams are getting better all the time. To think that we were strangers a couple of nights ago. And though it's a dream, I never dreamed she'd ever say hello. Well, maybe tonight she'll smile at me when the moonbeams shine. My dreams are getting better all the time. Well, what do you know? She looked at me in my dreams last night. My dreams are getting better all the time. Well, what do you know? She looked at me in a different light. My dreams are getting better all the time. To think that we were strangers a couple of nights ago. And though it's a dream, I never dreamed she'd ever say hello. Well, maybe tonight she'll smile at me when the moonbeams shine. My dreams are getting better all the time, sweetheart. Better and better and better all the time. Thank you. My dreams are getting better all the time, written by Vic Mizzy and Curtis Mann, and introduced by Marion Hutton in an Abbott and Costello movie called In Society. Well, we'll talk more about Abbott and Costello later in the show, but right now it's time to meet the two mighty maestros at the keyboard, Mike Yanuzzi. Thank you. And at the guitar, Sandy Renda. I'm in a dreamy mood, so we'll go from My Dreams Are Getting Better All the Time to this other big hit written by Ali Rubel and Herb Magidson, I'll Buy That Dream. Imagine you with your head on my shoulder and me with my lips getting bolder. A sky full of moon, a sweet mellow tune. I'll buy that dream. Imagine you in a gown, white and flowery, and me thanking Dad for your dowry. A church full of folks, those last minute jokes. I'll buy that dream. Oh, a honeymoon in Cairo in a brand new auto gyro, then home by rocket in a wink. We'll settle down near Dallas in a little plastic palace. It's not as crazy as you think. Imagine me on our first anniversary with someone like you in the nursery. It doesn't sound bad, and if it can be had, I'll buy that dream. Oh, a honeymoon in Cairo in a brand new auto gyro, then home by rocket in a wink. We'll settle down near Dallas in a little plastic palace. It's not as crazy as you think. Imagine you on our first anniversary with someone like me in the nursery. It doesn't sound bad, and if it can be had, I'll buy that dream. Oh yeah, I'll buy that dream. We had our announcer Wayne Rubin
open up our show tonight with an imitation of Bud Abbott and Lou Costello in honor of a very special occasion, Lou Costello's centennial, because Lou Costello was born in Paterson, New Jersey, exactly 100 years ago on March the 6th, 1906. So we're going to pay a little tribute to Bud and Lou, Abbott and Costello, right now with my fellow Abbott and Costello fan, Mike Yanuzzi.
Okay, which one are you, Bud or Lou?
Oh, well, we'll be both. We'll take our turns. We're not going to do their routines. Nobody could do their routines like them. But we're going to talk about them. Yeah, I'm sure that you grew up like me watching the Abbott and Costello movies on television.
Absolutely.
You must have some great memories of those two.
I do. You know, it was kind of like a Saturday kind of thing. Used to watch the Abbott and Costello movies, and the Bowery Boys were on every Saturday, and then roller derby and professional wrestling, so it was a perfect day.
But it's actually more fun to watch the movies now, because when they were shown on TV in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, they were interrupted by commercials.
Correct.
But now if you get to see them on AMC or TCM, no commercials as they were originally made. What were some of your favorite Abbott and Costello films?
Oh, my favorite Abbott and Costello movie was actually The Times of Their Lives.
Yes, that's a great picture. The Time of Their Lives.
The Time of Their Lives. And that was, to my understanding, that was the first Abbott and Costello movie where the two of them didn't play as a team together.
Absolutely. They played different characters.
Right.
And there was only one other film called Little Giant where they also did the same thing.
Right.
But unfortunately, those pictures were not big hits at the time they were made.
Right.
So Abbott and Costello went back to the format of being, two partners, Bud and Lou.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the beginnings of Abbott and Costello. They met in burlesque in 1936. Now, by then, Bud Abbott, the straight man, had worked with many, many other comics before, and Lou Costello, the funny man, had worked with many straight men before. But when they met and worked together in New York City for the first time, it really clicked. And they became, within a couple of years, the top comedy act in burlesque.
Right.
Then they went into a Broadway show called The Streets of Paris with Carmen Miranda and Bobby Clark, which was a big hit. And then Kate Smith heard about them and invited them to be on the radio. Right. And that's when they had their first big national exposure. And that's the first time they did Who's on First for a national audience. Well, you know what came after radio and Broadway?
Right, movies.
Movies.
Absolutely.
Universal Studios signed them to that long-term contract, and they made 36 feature films, more than any other comedy team in history, over a period of 16 years. So, of course, Buck Privates, Hold That Ghost, Keep 'em Flying.
In the Navy.
In the Navy were some of the early ones that they made. And then in the late 40s, they started a new genre of films, and I think you know what I'm talking about. Abbott and Costello
meets The Mummy, meets Frankenstein.
That kept them in the top box office for all those years. Right. And they were also, during World War II, they sold more war bonds than any other act in show business.
Well, I believe they were the biggest. They were the biggest box office draw for a number of years.
Absolutely. During the 1940s, they were top #1 for several years. And then in 1950, they embarked on a new media, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Television, absolutely. The Abbott and Costello show.
Absolutely, which is still in reruns today. I'm sure you have fond memories of that show.
I do. That was a very funny show. I always liked. And I believe it was Lou's brother-in-law that played Botchagaloop.
That was Joe Kirk.
Joe Kirk,
correct. And then Sidney Fields played Sidney Fields, the landlord.
Right.
And
Joe Besser
played Stinky. I'll harm you. You remember that? And then Hillary Brooke, the beautiful actress.
My favorite.
And then the cop, Mike the cop.
Mike the cop.
You're Mike, and I guess you must have liked Mike the cop. And that was Gordon Jones, a fine character actor. And the great thing about Abbott and Costello is that they got to do all their burlesque routines. They knew hundreds of routines, not just Who's on First, but there were so many, and they got to do them on radio, in burlesque, in vaudeville, on television. Also, they were the host of the Colgate Comedy Hour during the 1950s, those live one-hour shows, which were on once a month. So what a great career, and want to mention one more thing about Lou Costello on a personal note, because they recently celebrated his birthday in Paterson. You read about that in the paper.
Yes, saw that in the paper.
And a lot of his friends and family were there. He did a lot for kids.
Yes, he did.
He raised a lot of money. I guess you heard about the Lou Costello Youth Foundation, which is still going on today.
He used to coach. He used to come back to Paterson and coach the kids, right?
That's right. That's absolutely right. So you think
the only
about
comedians in the baseball. You know what a big baseball fan I am.
That's right. Yes.
The only comedians in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Correct,
For
Abbott and
Who's On
Costello,
First.
and there's
Absolutely.
a gold record of Who's On First. So whenever we think of Lou Costello and Bud Abbott, we think of Who's On First, but tonight we think of our good friend Lou Costello. And thanks again to Wayne Rubin for that wonderful imitation, and thanks to
Wayne.
Mike Unnuzzi for your
You're
memories.
quite welcome.
And we'll
Steve.
always remember Lou Costello. Thank you very much.
Well, Sandy, on last month's show, we celebrated my birthday party with a big successful evening. And tonight we celebrate, as we are taping on March the 20th, we celebrate the first day of spring.
Spring ain't here.
That's right.
It's really cold out.
We're very cold as we're taping.
But this is a pretty one. A call, spring is here.
Spring is here, featuring Sandy Renda and Mike Unnuzzi. Take it away.
Ladies and gentlemen, on my birthday show last month, he was the singing talent scout. But tonight, it's a tribute to a talent scout as we salute our good friend over his 43-year career. So here he is, our very good friend, the talent scout, Walt Gollender. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. 42 years, because I retired about 1 year before that.
Okay, but you began in 1963.
1963 with Jimmy Miller.
Okay, but you don't count that 1 year that you took off.
All
Is that
right.
How you go?
So 40
I'll throw that year in.
43 and a half. And
That's right.
it's good to actually reflect back on all the years. It would be impossible to cover all the highlights, and that's why I recommend people to take a look at the website.
Give out your
All right.
website, Walter.
All
Give it
right.
out.
www.waltgollender.biz, B-I-Z, and any of the highlights you hear me mentioning here, you can see a whole chronological story of what I've done over the years, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of good things, a lot of sad things, because the more you get involved in show business, the more chance you're exposing yourself, and it's
You give the whole story in the website.
the website chronologically
That's
from
right.
the Four Aces, which started me in the business, and they were my be-all and end-all. And if you're looking at your screen right now, there are a couple of shots of myself with Al Alberts and the Four Aces in 1954, and it's me in the middle. 1955, it's me in the middle in Asbury Park, New Jersey. And I was always interested in the high voice, like David Whitfield, Mario Lanza, the big high tenor voice, and so Al Alberts appealed to me, and everything the Aces did appealed to me. And then in 1957, in the clubs of Newark, I heard Frankie Valli, and nobody had a higher voice at that time than him, and that was very unusual. So here's a shot of myself with Frankie Valli. It's a picture taken in 1986, but we go back to the Broadway Lounge in North Newark in 1957 when I was just graduating from Montclair State College, and we were talking in the club in 1957. It was Mike Tarantino's Broadway Lounge, and Frankie and I were talking during the break, and he said, "You're a teacher? I'd like to write kiddie songs. Maybe we'll collaborate." And I said to him very honestly, "I don't want to write kiddie songs. My goal is to write for the Four Aces and do something on the pop level." He
But
said,
little did you know
no.
that the Four Aces would break up a year later.
No, not in 50. Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
right. That's
right.
right. Very good. You're very mathematically attuned. Yeah, in 58, Al Alberts quits the Four Aces.
So
in
maybe you
September.
should have taken Frankie
No.
Valli's offer and written the children's songs.
Maybe I don't want to write children's songs, so maybe I turned them down.
But
and,
what made Frankie Valli want to write children's songs?
Because he wanted to do something in the writing vein, because he was already singing his Como Si Bella, and he was singing My Mother's Eyes and doing the song beating on his conga drum, and he just thought it would be maybe he was just trying to flatter me in the club. We don't know. But anyway, there's a picture of Frankie Valli and myself. And then I had a very nice write-up by Cindy Adams.
Now, this is very recent now.
This was about 3 weeks ago in the New York Post, and there's a nice shot of Frankie Valli, and about 6 paragraphs talk about my archiving and the fact that I am a world
I want to
archive.
congratulate you. That's very big to have your name mentioned
Go
in
ahead,
a national
congratulate me.
New York City column written by Cindy Adams pertaining to Frankie Valli and the new Broadway hit Jersey Boys.
And enough has been said about that. If I hear one more thing about that, but it deserves all the accolades that it's getting.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And there's a item on myself, and she gave me about 6 paragraphs in there. And then over the years, I was doing a lot of talent scouting and supplying talent to different record producers. 1965, I think we have a picture of the Royal Theater on Bloomfield Avenue in
Is this Jimmy
Bloomfield.
Miller coming up?
Well, Jimmy Miller emceed those shows, which I produced. But at those Royal Theater shows in April of 1965, I was producing the shows, paying for the theater, and after about 2 or 3 weeks, we weren't drawing a crowd because people were going down the shore, and Andy Garofalo had talked me into doing the shows. And Sandy and I know Andy very well from the good old days because they were all from that Watts.
These were live vaudeville stage shows,
live
right?
stage shows with 26 to 28 acts.
And you were the MC.
No. I let Jimmy Miller MC them. I produced them. 28 acts. I would put them in a certain order. We had 2 bandstands, two setups on stage. We had the rock band over here. We had another rock band over there, and in between the girl singers and the duos and trios would sing.
Very impressive.
And at the Royal Theater shows, sitting in the audience was Max Weinberg.
Little Max Weinberg.
Little Max. It was about 1965. He was at Columbia High School. He graduates eventually. Doesn't everybody? I hope.
I hope so.
He graduates
And
in
he was already a drummer, right?
He was a drummer, and we did his first demos, which we're going to talk about later on, in my studio. But in 1968, he comes out of Columbia High School and goes into more rock and rolling, which we'll hear about later on.
Now, you've got a special audio clip pertaining to Max Weinberg. Introduce it.
I'm very proud of that. 1989, Max Weinberg was the keynote speaker at a New Brunswick music seminar down in New Brunswick at a big hotel, and he was holding a question and answer period with the audience, and I walked up toward the front and I raised my hand, and I was called upon by Max at the seminar, and this is what the audio sounds like. First, he's finishing up talking about something else, and he spots me, and it sounds something like this.
Listen.
Here it is.
Mr. Gollender.
In your opinion, Max, which was a better band, the Epsilons or Frost's Child?
Without a doubt, the Epsilons. Let me introduce this gentleman, Mr. Walter Gollender, legendary New Jersey promoter, who, when I was in high school, was the man that you took your demo tape to. And he was very inspirational to us because he did give us hope. He used to produce these rock and roll shows in the mid-60s at the Royal Theater in Bloomfield. And, you know, the big dream was to get on one of these rock and roll shows, just to get on it and play. So he knows whereof he speaks.
I angered you 3 years ago. Tell him how I angered you.
Well, Mr. Gollender has a...
Good must come with the bad.
He is the ultimate promoter because and he's a delightful fellow. But I'm going to tell you exactly what he's referring to.
Right?
Yes, and I'm going to tell him.
People that we talk about this morning.
Well, this the classic New Jersey promotion story. When you take a picture with someone and it ends up in a publication the next week as if you're managing them.
Never said that.
No, but I still think you're a delightful guy. And I'll tell you, Mr. Gollender had see the respect I afforded Mr. Gollender. My first recording session.
People came to Dalton's that day.
He was right. My first recording session took place in a garage in Union, New Jersey. The first time I ever made a record, he paid for it. And I'm going to get that $15 back to you as soon as I can. I got to take a couple more questions.
Wow, that's very impressive, Walter.
Well, and there was a picture, as you can see, of
We're
Max
looking at the picture,
and
yeah.
his current group, the Max Weinberg 7.
On the Conan O'Brien
That's
show.
correct. So
That's
he did
correct.
all right for himself.
Pretty good,
So
yeah.
once again, my influence did some good for some people.
Absolutely.
1974, I received a phone call from Palisades Park, New Jersey, the legendary Joey Vann, the original lead singer of the Duprees, who, by the way, has created a lot of work for a lot of guys since he died. And Joey Vann called me up. We met at the Parkway Diner up in Garfield, in the Toley style, and we hit it off pretty well. I signed him to a very simple contract, and I managed him from November 1974 to April 1975. I offered Joey Vann, and by the way, there's a picture of myself and Joey Vann there. And in that space of time, not one record company picked up on him and did not want to record him again, even though he was the voice who had all the hits on Co-Ed Records. Nobody of the 28 record companies wanted Joey Vann at that point.
Well, they didn't know what they were missing.
Well, maybe it wasn't a right time for them, because he never did have another success. Even after he left me, and he went with other people, and he sang with a group called Vintage, and he sang with numerous other groups until he actually, I don't want to say, well, he had a very sad ending, let's just put it that way, in 1984. So not much came of the Joey Vann situation, but we had the pleasure of working with the original singer, and later on I did several albums with his subsequent singer, Richie Rosato. I was executive producer of the Take Me
first LP of the
the
Duprees.
first LP that Richie Rosato wanted to do, called Take Me As I Am. In 1984 and 1987, we did the Silver Anniversary,
I remember that.
which took the 10 songs and we put another 15 to them. We called it the Silver Anniversary. It was 25 love songs for 25 years. So that took us right up to the Duprees period.
And then in 1987, you and Al Alberts, your idol, appear on the Joe Franklin TV show.
I coaxed Al and I said, make the 160-mile trip from North Cape May all the way up to Channel 9 on Meadowlands Parkway. He didn't get paid. He didn't get anything, but he just did it because of our relationship. And he came up and did 4 shows. We did 2 on one day, and then we did 2 the following month. And we had 4 appearances on the Al Alberts, Joe Franklin couch. And all through the years, from the time I met him till he moved to Florida, he's about 83 years old now, he always said to the whole world that I was his official biographer and expert and archiver, and I knew more about him than he knew about himself. And let's prove that right now. Let's go to the first of the 4 Joe Franklin shows, and it's 1987, and you are there.
So, Walter, you're talking to a lot of people, more than you could reach at one banquet. How would you set the scene for Mr. Al Alberts?
Well, I don't know if we have enough time, but I'll just sort of condense it. I would say the lead singer of perhaps not only the most exciting vocal group of the early 50s to the middle 50s, but the first vocal group to actually do choreography, Joe. The first group that not only excited you vocally, but they had movements on stage that brought the house down. And they choreographed all of their up-tempo songs. And this gentleman here with his expressive hands just made a name for himself, and many of the groups that followed in their footsteps, like the Four Coins and the Chuckles, all had that shuffle rhythm.
And the hubcaps and the nosebleeds and the cufflinks.
But
Mr.
the
Alberts,
shuffle rhythm came from what these gentlemen
Mr.
did.
Alberts, how have you been? And let's...
Listen, after those 2 introductions, I think I'm going to quit right here, Joe. I'm ahead of the game.
Would you say, Mr. Alberts, that Mr. Gollender knows more about your life than you know about your life?
Absolutely. If I want to know where I was in 1965 or in August, whatever, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I just call Walt. because I don't have, he brought in some pictures. I don't know where half of them were taken.
And then 3 or 4 years after the Franklin show, thanks to you, Al Alberts appeared right here on the Steve
Made the
Ames
trip
show.
again 160
That's right, and I'll
miles.
always be thankful to you. I just want to mention Walt Gollender's talking about his great career as a record producer and a producer of stage shows. But for the first 10 years of the Steve Ames show, he was not only the announcer but also the talent coordinator and got me some of my best guests. So let's hear it again for Walt Gollender.
Hey.
I appreciate that very, very much. Walter, give out the website one more time.
All right. In case you want to read all the stories in chronological order, www.waltgollender.biz, and you can see 40 years of details.
43 years.
43
Don't forget
years.
that 43rd year.
43 years in chronological order.
Absolutely. This man has accomplished a lot through radio, through television, through recordings, through live appearances.
Having good ears.
Having good ears and meeting some of the most important people in this business over the last 4 decades. And I'm just proud to be his friend and colleague. I'm proud to be your friend and colleague. Walt Gollender, long may you be a talent scout. Let's hear it for Walter. Thank you.
Thank you. 40 more years to go. God forbid.
Excellent. Well, that's our show for tonight. I want to thank announcer Wayne Rubin, producer-director Jerry Schoenthal, our special guest Walt Gollender, and last but not least, the mighty musicians Sandy Rand and Mike Yanuzzi. And thanks to all of you. Until we meet again, remember, bye-bye, baby. Remember you're my baby when they give you the eye. Although I know that you care, won't you write and declare that though on the loose you are still on the square? I'll be gloomy, just send that rainbow to me, then my shadows will fly. Although you're gone for a while, I know that I'll be waiting for my baby by and by. For my baby by and by. Good night. Remember, bye.